A homeless girl helped a millionaire translate codes, saving him $680 million in losses, shocking everyone with her talent. Her life would never be the same again. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The rain hammered the cracked pavement of downtown Seattle as Marcus Wellington pulled his black Mercedes to the curb. Steam rose from the manholes, creating an eerie backdrop for what should have been just another Tuesday evening. But nothing about this evening would be ordinary. Marcus stepped out, his $1,000 Italian shoes splashing into a puddle. At 38, he commanded a tech empire worth over $2 billion. Yet tonight, he felt more helpless than a child. His company, Wellington Industries, was hemorrhaging money. $680 million hung in the balance, all because of a coding system that no one, not even his brightest engineers, could crack. "Sir, perhaps we should head back," called James Rodriguez, his assistant, from inside the car. "The board meeting is in 2 hours." Marcus ignored him, his eyes scanning the dark alley where his security team had traced the mysterious signal. For weeks, someone had been accessing their encrypted files, leaving behind cryptic messages in a language that defied every expert they'd consulted. That's when he saw her. Huddled against a brick wall, barely visible beneath a torn cardboard shelter, sat a little girl. Her clothes were 3 sizes too big, held together with safety pins and hope. Dirty blonde hair fell across her face as she hunched over something in her lap, an old laptop, its screen flickering with green text that made Marcus's breath catch. The code. She was reading their code. "Hey there," Marcus said softly, crouching down to her level. "What's your name, sweetheart?" The girl looked up with startling blue eyes that seemed far too wise for her 7 years. "Lucy," she whispered, quickly closing the laptop. "Lucy Thompson. I wasn't stealing anything, mister. I found this computer in the dumpster." Marcus studied the screen she'd tried to hide. His heart raced as he recognized the exact encryption patterns that had been driving his team insane. But there was something different. She had sections translated, decoded, making sense of symbols that had looked like gibberish to everyone else. "Lucy, that code you were looking at, do you understand what it says?" She nodded slowly, fear and curiosity warring in her expression. "It's like a puzzle, but easier than most. The patterns tell stories if you know how to listen." Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him. This homeless child, sitting in a puddle-soaked alley, might be the key to saving his entire company. But as he looked into those ancient eyes, he realized something else. Lucy Thompson was harboring a secret that would change everything he thought he knew about genius, about family, and about the mysterious messages that had been haunting his company. "Lucy," he said gently, "how would you like to help me solve the biggest puzzle of my life?" The rain continued to fall, but neither of them noticed. In that moment, 2 worlds were about to collide, and nothing would ever be the same again. 20 minutes later, Lucy sat in the back of Marcus's Mercedes, clutching her broken laptop like a lifeline. The leather seats felt foreign against her skin, too soft after months of sleeping on concrete and cardboard. She kept glancing at the door handles, calculating escape routes, a survival instinct honed by 3 years on Seattle's unforgiving streets. She had learned early that adults often made promises they couldn't keep, and trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the city noise filtering through bulletproof windows. "Somewhere safe," Marcus replied, studying the remarkable child in his rearview mirror. Her intelligence was undeniable, but there was something deeply haunting in those blue eyes, a wariness that spoke of experiences no 7-year-old should ever endure. The way she held herself, always ready to run, broke his heart. "Lucy, what I'm about to show you is very important. My company is in serious trouble, and I believe you might be the only person in the world who can help us." "Why would you trust me?" Lucy whispered, pulling her oversized jacket tighter around her small frame. "Everyone says street kids are just trouble. The police tell us to move along, the store owners call us thieves, the social workers say we're lost causes." Marcus felt his heart constrict with unexpected emotion, because sometimes the most extraordinary help comes from the most unexpected places. And Lucy, what you did back there with those codes, that wasn't just smart. That was absolutely miraculous. I've seen PhD cryptographers struggle with patterns you read like a children's book. The little girl's eyes brightened slightly, a flicker of pride breaking through years of being told she was worthless. "My daddy always said I was special with numbers. He taught me that patterns are everywhere, in music, in nature, in the way people think. You just have to know how to listen." At Wellington Industries headquarters, the 42nd floor buzzed with frantic activity despite the late hour. Engineers hunched over computers, their faces illuminated by screens full of incomprehensible symbols that looked like alien hieroglyphics. The air reeked of coffee, energy drinks, and the desperation of brilliant minds pushed to their breaking point. Several team members had been working for 72 hours straight, surviving on pure adrenaline and the knowledge that their jobs hung in the balance. "This is our crisis center," Marcus explained as they walked through the maze of high-tech workstations. "For 3 weeks, someone has been sending us these coded messages, and each one has cost us millions in lost contracts and damaged reputation. We have exactly 12 hours before our biggest client, Meridian Tech, pulls their $800 million contract and destroys our credibility in the market." Lucy approached the main display screen, her small fingers tracing the symbols in the air as if reading invisible braille. The room fell eerily silent as everyone watched this tiny figure study patterns that had defeated their best minds, their most sophisticated algorithms, their million-dollar supercomputers. "These aren't random attacks," she whispered, her voice gaining confidence as the patterns revealed their secrets. "They're coordinates, but not just locations. They're emotional coordinates too. And this part here." She pointed to a series of numbers that had puzzled the team for days. "It's a date that changed everything. Something terrible and important happened on March 15th, 2019. Dr. Sarah Chen, Wellington's head cryptographer with degrees from MIT and Stanford, nearly dropped her coffee cup, her hands trembling slightly. "That's absolutely impossible. We've run this through every algorithm we have, consulted with the NSA's best code breakers, even brought in quantum computers from IBM." But Lucy was already moving to another screen with fluid grace, her eyes scanning patterns that had stumped PhD holders for weeks. Her movements were instinctive, almost mystical, as if she was reading her native language written by someone she loved. "The person writing these knows you personally, Mr. Wellington. They know your habits, your weaknesses, your fears, the way you take your coffee in the morning. This isn't corporate espionage. This is someone who cares about you, trying to save you from something terrible that's coming." Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him as he realized this homeless child might hold the key to saving everything he had spent 20 years building. The next morning, Marcus arranged for Lucy to stay at the Four Seasons downtown, complete with a designer wardrobe and private tutoring from Seattle's best educators. But she insisted on returning to work at the office, claiming the hotel felt too empty and cold. Word had spread quickly throughout the tech community about the mysterious girl who could read impossible codes, and reporters were already gathering outside the building like vultures, sensing a story. "How do you actually do it?" asked Tommy Park, a junior programmer fresh from Carnegie Mellon with a master's degree in cybersecurity, watching Lucy decode another message in minutes that had taken his entire team 3 sleepless days. I mean, I've been studying advanced cryptography for 6 years, worked with machine learning algorithms, and I can barely follow your thought process. It's like watching magic." Lucy paused thoughtfully, considering her words carefully, while her fingers continued dancing across the keyboard with supernatural speed and precision. "It's like... Imagine everyone else sees letters scattered randomly across a page, but I see music. The patterns sing to me, tell me stories about the person who created them, their emotions, their intentions, their fears." She pointed to the screen, where symbols seemed to pulse with hidden meaning. "This person is scared but determined. They're hiding something precious, something worth dying for," Marcus observed from his office doorway, phone pressed to his ear as he fielded increasingly hostile calls from board members and investors. "Yes, I understand the board's concerns about our irregular methods," he said tersely to Chairman Roberts, his patience wearing thin. "But we're making breakthrough progress that traditional approaches couldn't achieve in months. Give me 48 more hours, and I'll deliver the solution that saves us hundreds of millions." "Wellington, the press is calling this a publicity stunt," Roberts snapped. "A homeless child solving what our Harvard and MIT experts cannot. It's not just embarrassing, it's professional suicide. Our competitors are laughing at us. Results speak louder than credentials, Roberts. This girl has solved more in one day than our entire team managed in 3 weeks." On the main screen, Lucy had revealed something that made the entire room fall into stunned silence. The latest message wasn't just coordinates, it was detailed blueprints, precise architectural schematics of Wellington Industries' most secret project, codenamed Phoenix. The plans included security protocols, financial projections, launch timelines, and technological specifications worth over $600 million. Information so classified that only 5 people in the world should have possessed it. "Mr. Wellington," Lucy called out, her voice trembling with the weight of her discovery. "Whoever is sending these messages, they're not trying to hurt your company, they're desperately trying to save it. Someone else is planning to steal everything you've built, and they're almost ready to execute their plan." The room erupted in whispers and frantic phone calls as the implications sank in. Marcus felt his blood run cold as pieces of a larger puzzle began forming. If Lucy was right, they weren't dealing with a simple hacker or even sophisticated corporate espionage. They were facing a carefully orchestrated conspiracy at the highest levels, masterminded by someone with intimate knowledge of their most classified projects. "Lucy, are you absolutely certain about this interpretation?" She nodded gravely, pointing to symbols at the bottom of the screen that looked like meaningless squiggles to everyone else, but sang with clear meaning to her trained eyes. "This signature pattern, I've seen it before. Not in your files, but—" She stopped abruptly, her face paling as if she had revealed too much, stepped too close to a dangerous truth. "Where, Lucy? Where have you seen it before?" But the little girl had gone silent, her eyes distant with a memory she couldn't or wouldn't share, a secret too painful or too dangerous to speak aloud. "Doctor?" Chen worked alongside Lucy throughout the long night, her amazement growing with each solved puzzle, each impossible breakthrough. "She's accomplishing in minutes what should take quantum supercomputers hours of processing time," she whispered to Marcus during a brief break, her voice filled with scientific wonder. "Her brain processes pattern recognition at a level I've never witnessed in 30 years of research. It's almost supernatural, like she's tapped into some universal language." Lucy sat curled in an oversized leather office chair, surrounded by empty juice boxes and crackers, but her mind remained laser-focused despite the late hour. Dark circles shadowed her young eyes, but her determination never wavered. "Dr. Chen, look at this sequence," she said, highlighting a section of code with practiced precision. The mathematician in me recognizes this as a modified Fibonacci spiral, but someone added personal markers, emotional signatures that transform pure math into human communication. As dawn broke over Seattle's skyline, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Lucy had decoded 17 complex messages, revealing a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of corporate America. The evidence painted a terrifying picture. Someone inside Wellington Industries was systematically selling secrets to Titan Corp, their biggest rival, in preparation for a hostile takeover that would destroy thousands of jobs. The timeline matches perfectly with our quarterly losses and security breaches, Marcus said grimly, studying the mountain of evidence sprawled across multiple screens. Every significant leak corresponds exactly to board meetings where only our inner circle was present. We're looking at someone with level 5 security clearance, someone I trust completely. Lucy yawned deeply, exhaustion finally showing on her young face, but her determination remained unwavering. Years of surviving on the streets had taught her to push through physical discomfort when something important was at stake. Mr. Wellington, the person sending you these warnings, they're in terrible, immediate danger. Look at the timestamps, the increasing frequency. She pointed to a pattern only she could see. The messages are getting more desperate, more urgent. Whoever this is, they're running out of time, maybe running for their life. Suddenly, the building's security alarms blared through the early morning quiet with ear-splitting intensity. Red emergency lights flashed throughout the floor as James Rodriguez burst into the room, his usually composed demeanor cracked with visible panic. "Sir, we have a serious security breach. Someone just attempted to break into the server room on sub-level 3. They bypassed our first 2 security checkpoints and knew the building layout perfectly. On the security monitors, they watched a figure in black tactical gear moving through the lower levels with suspicious expertise and intimate knowledge of the building's layout. The intruder avoided cameras with professional skill, knew exactly which corridors to use, and had bypassed 3 separate security checkpoints without triggering a single alert until the final, most secure door. Thereafter, the decoded messages, Lucy said quietly, her voice carrying a maturity that chilled Marcus to the bone. They know I cracked their code, and now they need to eliminate all evidence of what we've discovered. Marcus felt the walls closing in around them, the weight of invisible enemies pressing down like a suffocating blanket. If Lucy was right, she had just become a target in a game far more dangerous than corporate espionage. But as he looked at this brilliant child, who had appeared in his life like a guardian angel, he realized something else. Lucy's knowledge of these codes went far deeper than she was admitting. "Lucy, I need you to tell me the absolute truth. How do you really know these patterns? This isn't just natural talent or lucky guessing." Her blue eyes filled with tears she refused to shed, years of forced independence warring with a child's desperate need for trust and safety. "Because my daddy taught them to me every night before bedtime, before he disappeared and left me all alone." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. The pieces of an impossible puzzle suddenly snapping into crystal-clear focus. Lucy's father had taught her the codes, the exact same codes that were now at the center of a $680 million crisis, threatening to destroy everything Marcus had spent his life building. "What was your father's full name, Lucy?" Dr. Chen asked gently, her scientific mind already racing through databases and personnel files, searching for connections that might explain this impossible coincidence. "David Allen Thompson. But everyone at his work called him Professor T because of his initials and because he taught people about computers." Lucy's voice was barely a whisper, each word carrying the weight of years of loneliness and unanswered questions that haunted her dreams. He worked with computers and told me bedtime stories about how numbers told secret stories that could help people and make the world safer. He said someday I'd be old enough to understand the really important work he did. Then one March day, he didn't come home from work, and the social workers came with sad faces and told me he was never coming back. Marcus felt the pieces clicking into place with terrifying clarity, his memory pulling up personnel files from 5 years ago that he had tried to forget. David Thompson, Professor T, had been Wellington Industries' lead cryptographer, the brilliant mind behind their most sophisticated security systems, the man who had vanished without a trace on a rainy March evening, leaving behind only revolutionary theories about quantum encryption that no one else could fully understand or implement. "Lucy," Marcus said carefully, choosing his words like a surgeon selecting delicate instruments, "your father didn't just work with computers. He worked for me. Right here in this building on the 41st floor. He created the very security systems that someone is now trying to break, the codes that protect our most valuable secrets." The little girl's eyes widened with a mixture of desperate hope and bone-deep fear, emotions she had learned to suppress during 3 years of survival on unforgiving streets. Does that mean you might know where he is? Can you help me find him and bring him home?" Before Marcus could formulate an answer that wouldn't crush her fragile spirit, the lights went out completely. Emergency power kicked in seconds later, bathing everything in an eerie red glow that made shadows dance across the walls like demons from a nightmare. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, they could see black SUVs with heavily tinted windows surrounding the building in a coordinated military-style pattern. "James, get all available security personnel up here immediately," Marcus ordered, but his assistant was staring at his phone, his face pale with shock and disbelief. "Sir, we have a much bigger problem developing. Titan Corp just announced they're releasing a product completely identical to our classified Phoenix project. The press release went out 20 minutes ago with technical specifications that match our designs exactly. The board is calling an emergency meeting in exactly 1 hour. They're voting on your immediate removal as CEO." Lucy stood up from her chair with sudden determination, her small frame silhouetted against the emergency lighting like a prophet bearing terrible but necessary news. "Mr. Wellington, the messages weren't just warnings about the theft. They were detailed step-by-step instructions for stopping it completely. But we need the final master code to unlock everything, and only one person in the entire world knows it." "Who?" "My daddy, and I think I know exactly where to find him." The emergency board meeting was pure chaos, angry voices echoing through the mahogany-paneled conference room as Marcus tried desperately to explain how a 7-year-old homeless girl had uncovered a massive conspiracy that their million-dollar security team and prestigious consulting firms had completely missed. "This is absolutely preposterous, Wellington," Chairman Roberts declared, his face red with indignation and barely controlled rage. "You're telling us to stake our entire company's future, thousands of jobs, and billions in shareholder value on the word of a child found living in an alley. Our shareholders will crucify us if this gets out to the financial media. The child has solved more complex problems in 3 days than our team managed in 3 weeks of round-the-clock work," Marcus shot back, with growing frustration. "Results matter more than conventional wisdom or academic credentials." This is a boardroom, not a charity case," another member shouted, but Lucy wasn't in the boardroom listening to adults argue about her capabilities and worth. She was 3 floors below in the secure server room, her small fingers flying across multiple keyboards as she accessed systems her father had designed with layers of quantum encryption that should have been mathematically impenetrable to anyone else on Earth. "Doctor, Chen watched in complete amazement as the little girl navigated through security protocols that required PhD-level understanding of advanced mathematics and computer science. "There," Lucy said finally, her voice tight with excitement and terror as coordinates appeared on the main screen like stars revealing themselves in a dark sky. "Daddy's not missing or dead. He's been hiding, staying invisible to protect something important. These coordinates, they're not just random locations on a map. They're a detailed trail showing exactly where he's been working and living all along." The coordinates led to an abandoned warehouse in Seattle's industrial district, but the IP address was very much alive and actively broadcasting encrypted data. Someone had been using that seemingly derelict location to send the warning messages for weeks, someone who knew Wellington Industries systems better than anyone else in the world, because he had originally created them from scratch. "Lucy, are you absolutely certain your father has been alive this whole time?" Dr. Chen asked, her voice filled with scientific wonder and human disbelief. Lucy nodded emphatically, tears of relief and hope streaming down her face as years of suppressed emotions finally broke free. "He's been trying to save your company from the inside, Mr. Wellington, but the bad people have been watching him, hunting him like an animal. He could only communicate through the special codes he taught me when I was little, hoping someone would eventually bring me to you so we could work together." Marcus felt his phone buzzing incessantly with furious messages from board members threatening lawsuits, resignations, and complete destruction of his career, but all he could focus on was this remarkable child who had just solved a 5-year mystery that had haunted his nightmares. David Thompson wasn't dead. He was hiding, protecting both his revolutionary work and his precious daughter, the only way he knew how. "The final message," Lucy continued, her small hands pulling up one last encrypted file that made all the screens flicker with its mathematical complexity. "Daddy left detailed instructions about everything, the conspiracy, the traitors, the evidence we need. The people trying to steal from you aren't just competitors trying to get ahead in business. They're working directly with someone inside your company, someone who helped fake his death and has been planning this complete takeover for years." And as the code began to decrypt line by line, revealing names and secret offshore bank accounts and photographic evidence of betrayal that reached the very top of Wellington Industries' power structure, Lucy looked up at Marcus with those impossibly wise blue eyes that had seen far too much suffering. "Mr. Wellington, are you ready to learn who really tried to destroy your company and killed my daddy's old life? Because once I decode this last message, some very powerful people are going to want us both to disappear forever." The final symbols began to appear on the screen like ancient prophecies coming to light, and Marcus realized that the next few minutes would either save his empire or destroy them all. The abandoned warehouse stood like a forgotten sentinel in Seattle's industrial district, its broken windows staring blindly into the fog-shrouded morning. Marcus parked his Mercedes 3 blocks away, following Lucy's insistence that they approach on foot to avoid detection by whoever might be watching. "Daddy always said the best hiding places are the ones everyone ignores," Lucy whispered as they walked through puddle-filled alleys, her small hand gripping Marcus's tightly. Despite her bravery, she was still just a 7-year-old girl, about to face the father she thought was dead. Dr. Chen stayed behind at Wellington Industries, monitoring their location and ready to alert authorities if something went wrong. The building's security had been tripled after the attempted break-in, but Marcus knew they were running out of time. The board meeting was in 6 hours, and Titan Corp's announcement had already sent Wellington's stock plummeting. As they approached the warehouse, Lucy suddenly stopped, her eyes wide with recognition. "That's Daddy's car," she breathed, pointing to a rust-covered Honda hidden behind a dumpster. "He taught me to memorize the license plate number in case we ever got separated." The warehouse's main door was secured with multiple locks, but Lucy led Marcus to a side entrance partially concealed by overgrown ivy. She pressed a sequence of numbers on what looked like a broken keypad, and the door clicked open with a soft, mechanical whisper. Inside, the warehouse was far from abandoned. Banks of sophisticated computer equipment hummed quietly in the shadows, powered by hidden generators. Cables snaked across the floor like technological veins, and multiple monitors displayed streams of encrypted data. The air smelled of coffee, and the ozone scent of electrical equipment running at full capacity. "David," Marcus called softly into the maze of equipment. A figure emerged from behind a wall of servers, and Lucy gasped, tears instantly streaming down her face. David Thompson looked older, thinner, with premature grey streaking his hair and deep lines of stress etched around his eyes. But when he saw his daughter, those eyes filled with pure joy and desperate relief. "Lucy, my brilliant little girl," he whispered, dropping to his knees as she ran into his arms. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm so very sorry I had to leave you." Marcus watched the reunion with a mixture of joy and growing urgency. "David, we need to talk. Wellington Industries is falling apart, and someone is using your work to destroy everything." David looked up, his face grave with knowledge that had haunted him for 5 years. "I know, Marcus. I've been watching, trying to warn you. But they're closer than you think. We have maybe 2 hours before they find this place." "Who are they?" Marcus demanded. David's expression darkened with betrayal and pain. "Someone you trust completely. Someone who's been planning this since before my supposed death. Someone who knows every secret, every weakness, every move you make before you make it." Lucy pulled back from her father's embrace, her face serious beyond her years. "Daddy, I decoded your messages. We know about the conspiracy, about Titan Corp, about the insider selling secrets, but we need names. We need proof." David smiled proudly at his daughter, then turned to Marcus with an expression of grim determination. "What I'm about to tell you will change everything you believe about loyalty and friendship. Are you ready to learn that the person closest to you has been your greatest enemy all along?" David led them deeper into the warehouse, past walls lined with photographs, documents, and conspiracy charts that looked like the work of a brilliant mind pushed to the edge of obsession. 5 years of investigation had transformed the space into a monument to corporate betrayal. After my death was staged, I spent months in hiding, watching, learning, David explained, his voice heavy with the weight of accumulated knowledge. I discovered that someone had been stealing my encryption algorithms for years, selling them piece by piece to Titan Corp. But it wasn't random theft. It was systematic preparation for a complete takeover. Lucy sat cross-legged on the floor, her laptop open as she began accessing files her father had collected. "Daddy, show Mr. Wellington the photographs from the Geneva meeting." David pulled up a series of surveillance photos on the main screen, images that made Marcus's blood run cold. There, in a luxury Swiss hotel, sat James Rodriguez, his trusted assistant of 8 years, shaking hands with Titan Corp's CEO and accepting what was clearly a briefcase full of cash. "James," Marcus whispered, the betrayal hitting him like a physical blow. "But he's been with me since the beginning. He knows everything about my business, my personal life, your daily routines, your security codes, your private elevator access, your weekend plans," David finished grimly. "He's been the perfect inside man because you never suspected someone so close, someone you treated like family." The surveillance photos continued, showing James at multiple meetings over the past 3 years, always with Titan Corp executives, always exchanging information and money. The most damning image showed him photographing classified documents in Marcus's own office. "But why fake your death?" Marcus asked, struggling to process the magnitude of the deception. "Because I got too close to discovering the truth," David replied. pulling up financial records that showed massive unexplained deposits in offshore accounts. James couldn't risk exposure, so he arranged for my car to explode while I was supposedly inside. He never imagined I'd suspected him and prepared for the worst. Lucy's fingers flew across her keyboard, accessing real-time data from Wellington Industries. "Daddy, look at this. Mr. Rodriguez is accessing the Phoenix Project files right now, downloading everything to an external drive." On the screen, they watched as James systematically copied 5 years of research and development, the crown jewels of Wellington Industries' future. The timestamp showed he had started the download immediately after Marcus left for the warehouse. "He knows we're here," David said urgently. "The moment you left the building with Lucy, he must have realized his time was up." Marcus felt his phone buzzing and saw multiple missed calls from James. The most recent text message made his heart skip. "Sir, urgent security threat at the warehouse location. Police en route. Return immediately for your safety." "He's setting us up," Marcus breathed. "If the police find us here with you, a supposedly dead man with all this surveillance equipment, we'll look like the criminals," David finished. "Corporate espionage, fraud, maybe even terrorism charges. James will be the loyal assistant who tried to protect his boss from dangerous conspirators." Lucy looked up from her laptop, her young face pale but determined. "Daddy, can we upload all the evidence to the cloud before they get here? Make it impossible for them to bury the truth." David smiled at his daughter's brilliance. "Already working on it, sweetheart, but we need Marcus to do something first, something that will expose James and save the company." "What? You need to return to Wellington Industries and act like nothing has happened. Let James think his plan worked. But this time, you'll be wearing a wire, and we'll be recording everything he says." Marcus stared at the screens showing James methodically destroying his life's work, feeling a rage unlike anything he'd ever experienced. What if he gets suspicious? What if he realizes we know? David's expression was grim but resolute. "Then Lucy and I will probably have to disappear again, this time forever. But your company will be saved, and thousands of jobs with it." Lucy stood up, walked over to Marcus, and took his hand in her small one. "Mr. Wellington, my daddy and I have been running and hiding for 5 years. We're tired of being afraid. It's time to fight back." The sound of distant sirens began echoing through the warehouse district, growing closer by the minute. Marcus raced back to Wellington Industries while David and Lucy uploaded terabytes of evidence to secure cloud servers around the world. His hands trembled on the steering wheel as he practiced the conversation he was about to have with the man who had betrayed everything he held dear. James waited in Marcus's office, his face a perfect mask of concern and loyalty. "Sir, thank God you're safe. When I heard about suspicious activity at that warehouse, I was terrified something had happened to you and the girl." "What kind of suspicious activity?" Marcus asked, forcing his voice to remain steady while the tiny recording device David had given him captured every word. "Our security team detected unusual digital signatures coming from that location, the same patterns as the messages that have been attacking our systems. It's clearly a cyber-criminal operation, possibly foreign agents trying to steal our technology." Marcus studied James's face, searching for cracks in the performance. This man had eaten dinner at his home, had met his family, had been trusted with his most intimate business secrets. "Did you call the police?" "Of course, sir. We can't take chances with national security implications." James moved closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Between you and me, I think that homeless girl might have been part of their operation. Think about it. What are the odds that a random street child could solve codes our experts couldn't? She was probably planted there to gain your trust." The casual accusation against Lucy ignited a fury in Marcus that took all his self-control to contain. "You think a 7-year-old girl is an international spy?" Stranger things have happened in corporate espionage. Children make perfect, unknowing assets. James sat down across from Marcus's desk, his demeanor shifting to something more calculating. "Sir, I need to ask you something, and I hope you'll forgive my directness. Are you absolutely certain you can trust the conclusions you've drawn from her work?" "What do you mean?" James opened his laptop and displayed a series of financial documents. "While you were gone, I took the liberty of investigating some irregularities in our accounts. It appears someone has been embezzling funds and using our own security systems to cover their tracks. The digital fingerprint suggests someone with high-level access." Marcus felt ice water run through his veins as he realized James was preparing to frame him for the very crimes James had committed. Who would have that level of access? "Very few people, sir. Board members, myself, Dr. Chen." James paused dramatically. "And you, of course." The trap was closing. James was positioning himself as the loyal assistant who had discovered his boss's criminal activities. Marcus could see how the story would play in the media. Desperate CEO steals from his own company, blames imaginary conspiracies, exploits homeless child to create sympathy. "James, these accusations are..." "Not accusations, sir, just observations. Of course, I would never suggest that you personally are involved. But someone with your access codes has been very busy." James's smile was cold and calculating. "Perhaps your security has been compromised. Perhaps someone close to you isn't who they seem to be." Through his office window, Marcus could see police cars surrounding the building. James had orchestrated this perfectly. Marcus would be arrested for crimes James had committed, using evidence James had fabricated. But then Lucy's voice crackled through the tiny speaker in Marcus's ear. "Mr. Wellington, Daddy says to ask him about the Geneva accounts. Tell him you know about Switzerland." Marcus took a deep breath and looked directly into James's eyes. "James, before we involve the authorities, I think we should discuss your recent trip to Geneva, the bank accounts, the meetings with Titan Corp executives." For the first time in 8 years, Marcus saw James's mask slip completely. The loyal assistant vanished, replaced by something cold and predatory. "I have no idea what you're talking about," James said, but his voice had changed, become harder, more calculating. "David Thompson is alive, James. He's been watching you for 5 years, documenting everything. Every meeting, every payment, every stolen file. We have photographs, financial records, and recorded conversations." James stood slowly, his hand moving towards something in his jacket. "David Thompson died in a car explosion 5 years ago. If someone is claiming to be him, they're obviously an imposter trying to confuse you. Then how do you explain his daughter knowing the encryption codes only he could have taught her?" James's expression twisted with rage and desperation. "That little street rat doesn't know anything. She's been coached, programmed to feed you false information by whoever is really behind this." The office door burst open as armed police officers stormed in, but Marcus realized with horror that they weren't there to arrest James. They were there for him. "Marcus Wellington, you're under arrest for corporate espionage, embezzlement, and conspiracy to defraud shareholders," announced Detective Sarah Morrison, holding up an arrest warrant. James stepped back with perfectly performed shock and dismay. "Detective, thank you for responding so quickly. As I explained on the phone, we've discovered evidence of systematic theft of proprietary technology and funds." Marcus felt the handcuffs click around his wrists as the devastating truth became clear. James hadn't just been stealing secrets. He had been preparing this moment for years, positioning himself to take control of Wellington Industries by eliminating Marcus entirely. "This is insane," Marcus protested. "Detective Morrison, the man making these accusations is the actual criminal." "I have evidence." "Sir, you have the right to remain silent," Detective Morrison interrupted. "Your assistant here has provided substantial documentation of financial irregularities and suspicious activities." Through his earpiece, Marcus heard Lucy's panicked voice. "Mr. Wellington, Daddy says the police traced our signal. They're coming to the warehouse. We have to run." James noticed Marcus's slight reaction to the voice only he could hear. "Detective, I believe Mr. Wellington is wearing an unauthorized communication device. He may be receiving instructions from his co-conspirators." Detective Morrison found the tiny earpiece and speaker, confirming James's suspicions. "Who are you in contact with, Mr. Wellington?" "The real victims of this conspiracy," Marcus said desperately. "James Rodriguez has been selling company secrets to Titan Corp for years. He faked David Thompson's death and has been systematically destroying Wellington Industries from the inside." James shook his head sadly, the picture of a loyal employee heartbroken by his boss's betrayal. "Detective, as painful as this is to admit, I believe Mr. Wellington may be suffering from paranoid delusions brought on by the stress of our company's financial troubles. He's been making increasingly erratic decisions, including bringing an unvetted homeless child into our secure facilities." "Where is this child now?" Detective Morrison asked. "Missing, along with the man claiming to be David Thompson," James replied. "I fear they may have fled when they realized their fraud was being exposed." Marcus watched in horror as James produced a tablet showing fabricated evidence. Bank transfers, apparently made from Marcus's personal accounts, emails supposedly written by Marcus to foreign contacts, financial documents bearing Marcus's digital signature authorizing the theft of company funds. "How long have you been planning this?" Marcus asked, genuine admiration mixing with his rage at the elaborate deception. James's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something almost like pride. "Since the day I started working for you, Marcus. You were always so trusting, so willing to share everything with your loyal assistant. You made it remarkably easy. But why?" "I treated you like family. I trusted you with everything." "Because you had everything," James snarled, his true emotions finally breaking through. "Brilliant father, inherited wealth, Harvard education, natural leadership ability. You never had to fight for anything, never had to prove yourself worthy. You just expected success to fall into your lap." The depth of resentment in James's voice was shocking. 8 years of hidden hatred and jealousy had festered beneath his perfect performance as the dedicated assistant. "And now?" Marcus asked, as Detective Morrison prepared to lead him away. James smiled coldly. "Now the board will appoint me as interim CEO to save the company from the mess you created. Titan Corp will generously offer to buy our assets at a discount to help us through this crisis, and I'll finally have what should have been mine all along." As Marcus was led toward the elevator, he heard gunshots echoing from the direction of the warehouse district. Through the window, he could see smoke rising in the distance. "Lucy," he whispered, his heart breaking as he realized the little girl who had saved his company might now be paying the ultimate price for her courage. James stood at the window, watching the smoke with satisfaction. "Don't worry, Marcus, your troubles are almost over." In the back of the police car, Marcus felt his world collapsing. Through the bulletproof glass, he watched Seattle blur past as they drove toward the county jail. His company was being stolen, his reputation destroyed, and worst of all, Lucy and David might be dead because of his failure to protect them. His phone, which the police had allowed him to keep until processing, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Underground tunnels. Dad hurt, but alive. Need help. L." Marcus's heart leaped. Lucy was alive, but David was injured. The warehouse raid had clearly gone wrong, but somehow they had escaped. He quickly typed back, "Where are you?" "Old subway tunnels under Pioneer Square. Dad bleeding bad. Police everywhere." Detective Morrison noticed Marcus texting. "Who are you communicating with, Mr. Wellington?" Marcus made a split-second decision that would either save everything or destroy his last chance at freedom. "Detective, I'm going to tell you something that will sound impossible, but I need you to check it out before it's too late. I'm listening. James Rodriguez is not who he claims to be. The real James Rodriguez died in a car accident in Portland 8 years ago. The man working for me stole his identity and has been living as a deep cover agent for Titan Corp. Detective Morrison frowned. That's a serious accusation. It's easily verifiable. Check his fingerprints against the original James Rodriguez's records. Check his dental records. Check anything you want. The man in my office is an imposter who has been planning this takedown for nearly a decade. While Detective Morrison made calls to verify the information, Marcus continued texting with Lucy. Can you get to a hospital? Too risky. Dad says they'll be watching hospitals. He's trying to stop bleeding with first aid kit. What about the evidence? Did you save everything? Yes. Uploaded to 17 different servers worldwide. But we need to get it to the right people before they silence us permanently. Marcus realized that even if he proved James's deception, it might be too late. Without David alive to testify and Lucy safe to confirm the evidence, James could still claim everything was an elaborate frame job. Detective Morrison hung up her phone, her expression troubled. Mr. Wellington, we have a problem. The fingerprints on file for James Rodriguez don't match the man in your office. Because he's been lying about everything for 8 years. We're turning around. I need to speak with this imposter immediately. As they raced back toward Wellington Industries, Marcus saw news vans gathering outside the building. James had clearly called the media to ensure maximum coverage of Marcus's downfall. But now, the story was about to change dramatically. Marcus's phone buzzed again. Dad unconscious, lost lots of blood. I don't know what to do. Lucy was alone in underground tunnels with her critically injured father, while the man who had tried to kill them both was upstairs preparing to claim victory. Marcus felt a desperate urgency, unlike anything he had ever experienced. Detective, we need an ambulance at Pioneer Square, underground tunnel system. There's a child down there with her wounded father. The same child you claim can decode impossible encryption. The same child who may be the only witness who can prove James Rodriguez is a murderer and a thief. As they pulled up to Wellington Industries, Marcus could see James through the lobby windows, giving an interview to reporters about the tragic betrayal by his trusted boss. The performance was flawless. The loyal assistant forced to expose corruption for the good of the company. But in a few minutes, the handcuffs would be on James instead of Marcus, and the real story would finally be told. If Lucy and David survived long enough to tell it. Detective Morrison spoke into her radio. This is Morrison. I need backup units at Wellington Industries and an emergency medical team at Pioneer Square Underground. We have a situation developing. Marcus looked up at the building he had spent his life creating, knowing that the next hour would determine whether justice prevailed or whether James's elaborate deception would become the official truth. Lucy, hold on, he whispered. Help is coming. The emergency medical team found Lucy in the abandoned subway tunnel beneath Pioneer Square, her small body curled protectively around her unconscious father. David's shirt was soaked with blood from a gunshot wound, but his breathing was steady. Lucy had used everything her father had taught her about first aid during their years of hiding, possibly saving his life. Is he going to be okay? Lucy asked the paramedic, her voice barely audible as they loaded David onto a stretcher. He's lost a lot of blood, but you did everything right, sweetheart, the paramedic replied gently. He's going to make it because of you. Meanwhile, at Wellington Industries, Detective Morrison confronted James Rodriguez in Marcus's office, now surrounded by FBI agents who had arrived after the identity fraud was confirmed. The federal investigation had moved with lightning speed once they realized the scope of the deception. Mr. Rodriguez, or whoever you really are, You're under arrest for identity theft, corporate espionage, conspiracy to commit fraud, and attempted murder," Detective Morrison announced. James's perfect composure finally cracked completely. "You can't prove anything. It's the word of a supposed dead man and a homeless child against mine." Actually, we can prove everything," said FBI agent Catherine Walsh, entering the office with a thick file. "Your real name is Miguel Santos, and you have a fascinating criminal history. Computer fraud in Mexico, identity theft in Canada, and now the most elaborate corporate takeover scheme we've ever seen." "Who did?" The media crews outside captured everything as James was led away in handcuffs, his 8-year performance finally over. The loyal assistant had been revealed as a master criminal who had infiltrated one of America's largest tech companies. At Seattle General Hospital, Marcus sat beside David's bed while Lucy curled up in the chair next to him, finally allowing exhaustion to claim her small body. David was stable. The surgery had been successful, and the doctors expected a full recovery. "Marcus," David said weakly, "I need to tell you something about Lucy that I've never told anyone." "What is it?" "Her ability with codes, with patterns. It's not just because I taught her. Lucy has a form of synesthesia that allows her to see mathematical relationships as colors and sounds. Combined with an IQ that's literally off the charts, she can process information in ways that seem impossible." Marcus looked at the sleeping child who had saved his empire. "She's going to need special education, special opportunities." "She's going to need a family," David said quietly. "These 5 years on the streets. I know what I put her through trying to protect her. She deserves stability, security, a chance to be a normal child." "She'll have all of that," Marcus promised. "Both of you will. Wellington Industries owes you more than we can ever repay." 3 months later, the Seattle courtroom was packed as Miguel Santos, the man who had lived as James Rodriguez, was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. The evidence that Lucy and David had gathered was overwhelming. Financial records, recorded conversations, photographic proof of years of systematic theft. Titan Corp's stock plummeted when their involvement in the conspiracy was revealed, and several of their executives faced their own criminal charges. Wellington Industries not only recovered its stolen technology, but received massive settlements that funded expansion into new markets. But the most important moment came when the judge officially approved Marcus's petition to become Lucy's legal guardian, while David recovered and rebuilt his life. The little girl who had been found in an alley was now part of a family that understood her extraordinary gifts. At the celebration dinner in Marcus's home, Lucy sat between her father and her new guardian, her eyes bright with happiness and security she had never known. Dr. Chen was there, along with Tommy Park and other colleagues who had become extended family. "Lucy," Marcus said, raising his glass of apple cider, "you taught us that sometimes the most extraordinary solutions come from the most unexpected places. You saved not just my company, but thousands of jobs and families." Lucy smiled shyly. "I just listened to the patterns, Mr. Wellington. Daddy always said the truth wants to be found if you know how to look for it." David, still recovering but growing stronger each day, put his arm around his daughter. "Lucy, sweetheart, you don't have to call him Mr. Wellington anymore. He's family now." Lucy looked up at Marcus with those impossibly wise blue eyes that had first captivated him in a rainy alley. "Thank you for believing in me when nobody else would." As Marcus looked around the table at this unconventional family that had formed through crisis and courage, he realized that the greatest code Lucy had cracked wasn't corporate encryption. It was the combination that unlocked the human heart. Outside, Seattle sparkled in the evening light, a city where a homeless child's extraordinary gift had brought justice to those who thought they were untouchable. In a world that often overlooks its most vulnerable members, Lucy Thompson had proven that genius and goodness can emerge from the most unlikely places. The little girl, who had been invisible to the world, had become the most visible symbol of hope, reminding everyone that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most powerful truths. And in the warm glow of family and belonging, Lucy finally looked like what she had always been, not a homeless child with a mysterious gift, but simply a 7-year-old girl who was loved, protected, and home.